If you can believe it, it looks like despite the fact Madam Web was such a huge commercial as well as critical failure when it was released just a few months ago, the movie is doing pretty well on streaming services. According to the Netflix chart, it's actually reached number 2 on the top 10 most streamed movie chart. So that's pretty good, all things considered. Now, I don't automatically believe the numbers that streaming services are reporting about themselves because they kind of have an incentive to embellish these numbers in order to try to make themselves look good, especially if it's a platform like Disney Plus where they're just reporting on the success of their own movies and shows. But let's assume for a moment that this is accurate, and I think it is probably more accurate than not, considering that Netflix doesn't own the rights or anything. It's not like this is a Sony platform reporting on the success of a Sony movie, but let's assume that these numbers are fairly accurate because I do think there is a greater implication on what this means for a lot of movies moving forward when they bomb at the box office yet seem to find success when they're put on streaming services. Madam Web is a rather infamous movie, with the 2024 superhero film being the latest entry in Sony's Spider-Man universe. Like the other films, Spider-Man himself wasn't present, but this was far from the only issue with the story. Yes, that's not the only issue, but it is a huge issue when you have a Spider-Man movie built around a Spider-Man character without Spider-Man in it. I've said in a previous video that I think this movie, or at least the character, would have been better received if she was just a side character in a Spider-Man movie, because that's what Sony's trying to do now. They're trying to build their own Spider-Man universe without having the Spider-Man character because they understand that's really all they have right now. But they can't really use Spider-Man, or at least they are unwilling to use Spider-Man. So they're trying to find some other way to make it work. And so far, we've seen that it really hasn't been too successful for them. They had some success with Venom because that's still a popular character amongst general audiences, but other characters like Madam Web, Morbius, Craven the Hunter, they're not really well known amongst general audiences. So I know 2 of those movies failed, and it's looking like Craven's probably going to be another failure for them too. But let's continue. Despite its many criticisms from both critics and casual moviegoers, Madam Web may be cementing a unique path for similar movies when it comes to streaming. Whether it's the result of the movie's memes or not, Madam Web is a huge hit on Netflix since it was released on the streaming service. This follows other disappointing superhero films seeing similar reception on Netflix and other streaming platforms. The article goes on to talk about how it was such a huge financial failure for Sony, bringing in only $100 million globally on an $80 to $100 million budget, which doesn't sound too bad on the surface until you take into consideration theaters get a certain cut of that as well. Plus, there's the marketing and distribution costs that aren't factored into the budget. So when it's all said and done, this movie was a financial failure for Sony. Similar to other comic book based movies like Morbius or Black Adam, those were financial failures when they were released theatrically, but they seem to do a lot better when they're put on Netflix. All 3 of these movies were very popular when added to Netflix, but Madam Web has taken the cake and consistently been one of the most searched movies on the platform. It is possible that a lot of this traffic may be driven by the curiosity of viewers to see if the movie is truly as bad as the press made it out to be. And I think there is an element of that to this, because a lot of people will see a movie on Netflix or something like that and think like, well, I heard this movie was terrible. I heard it's good, so I'll give it a shot. Something that they might not have ordinarily paid money to watch in theaters, because you're not going to pay good money to watch something out of curiosity. I guess some people like watching bad movies, so they will do that. But I think a lot of the times, though, a movie will be more successful on Netflix if it had a lot of buzz surrounding it when it was released theatrically. Studios used to think buzz surrounding a movie when it was released theatrically equates to ticket sales. Well, we know for a fact that's not the case, but it could mean better views when it comes to streaming platforms, because people really don't have anything to lose watching it on streaming platforms. Maybe just losing a couple hours of their time, but even then, it's not really like it's a huge investment, because if you don't like it, you can turn it off, or it's something that you can have on in the background when you're doing something, or you can have friends over and watch it and you can just laugh about it and get drunk or something like that. Or at least I think that's why a lot of bad movies will find success on Netflix, or maybe I'm just kind of projecting or something like that. Who knows? Still, regardless of this possible reason, its success on Netflix is a stark contrast to its theatrical performance, which speaks to how niche superhero movies might succeed in the future. I kind of agree with this, because Hollywood used to intuitively know what targeted demographics were, and that's how they would make their movies and adjust the budgets accordingly. If it was appealing to a large segment of the audience, you'd give it a bigger budget. If it was more niche, then you'd give it a smaller budget. Unfortunately, somewhere down the line, Hollywood thought targeted demographics just means representation. So you can just throw in various groups and that would get people from those groups to watch your movie. Take Madam Web, for instance. They're saying we want to make it appeal to a female segment of the audience. All right, put women in the movie, then it should appeal to them. They want to appeal to other demographics. Put a Latina girl in there and a black girl in there, and that should appeal to those demographics too, right? Well, no, that's not really how it works. People don't watch a movie because a character in the movie has the same skin pigment as them. That's kind of a stupid concept. And I don't know why anyone thinks that's a good idea, but apparently that's the path they're choosing, which is why they're failing because they're trying to give their movies budgets of general audience appeal, but they're not actually doing anything to appeal to general audiences. They're doing something that appeals to a niche audience and then trying to slap in some tokens in order to actually think that they're representing those various groups and going to get those groups to watch their movie. And it's not working out for them. Both 2023 and especially 2024 have seen the question of superhero fatigue being asked, not to mention a generally bleak box office for major movies as a whole. And that's a whole other thing too, because whenever the movie like this fails, they say it's just superhero fatigue, but we're seeing it all around, even movies that are well received. Fall Guy, Furiosa in theaters right now, both movies that are well received, but are bombing at the box office or did bomb at the box office because people just aren't going to movies like they used to. Part of this is due to the post-pandemic inflation, but it's just as arguable that even if economic conditions were optimal, streaming has changed the game too much for business as usual. Even beyond the superhero genre, the influx of streaming that occurred during the onset of COVID-19 pandemic caused audiences to prefer experiencing certain movies in this format as the norm. Watching movies at home is not a new concept since made-for-TV movies have been around for quite a while. Hallmark is an entire network built around cheap, crappy made-for-TV movies, but clearly they turn a profit, which is why they're continuing to do this sort of thing. But when it comes to a lot of major movies, they're releasing them so soon on streaming platforms. A lot of people just figure like, well, I'm kind of interested in that, but it's just coming out in a couple months. So I'll just wait and watch it on a streaming platform because I'm not 100% sure about it. When in the past, a movie was like, I don't know, 8-9 months before it was released on home video after it went to the theaters. So people, if they weren't 100% sure, they'd be like, well, I'm not 100% sure, but I don't want to wait that long to check it out. So I guess I'll watch it in theaters. And that's kind of the thing that's changed during the COVID-19 pandemic era is that people are conditioned just to watch something on streaming platform because it's not going to be much longer after it's in theaters that it's going to be on streaming. And if studios are going to do that, that's fine. But I think if you're going to do that, you should treat streaming platforms as basically just made for TV movies. If it's movie that's going to be released on streaming just a couple months later, then you should just give it the budget of a made for TV movie and you could probably be profitable that way. But if you're going to give it blockbuster budgets, then you have to delay the release of it on home video. Otherwise, you're just kind of throwing money away. But let me know what you think about all this in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't already, make sure you click that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date with the latest in entertainment news. And don't forget to like and share the video because it really helps out with the channel. Thank you.